I never thought selling a busted old keyboard on Craigslist would leave me looking over my shoulder every day. My friends told me to write this down, not because they think it'll go viral or anything, but because, as one of them put it, if it happened to you, it could happen to somebody else. So this is me doing that. My name is Stanton. I'm 24 and I compose music for local choirs and small productions. It's not glamorous. I live with a roommate in a decent little duplex outside the city. Money has always been tight, so I sometimes sell old music gear online. You'd be amazed by what people will pay for a beat-up mic stand or a broken synthesizer. A few months ago, I listed a cheap keyboard on Craigslist. It was missing a key, no longer had the built-in speakers, and the power cord was held together with electrical tape. I listed it for $25, nothing special. It was basically clutter at that point, but I figured it was worth a shot before throwing it out. The listing had maybe 3 lines. Old keyboard, missing a key, no speakers, works with aux out, local pickup only. Nothing fancy. I wasn't trying to upsell it or make a profit. I just wanted it gone. I got a few nibbles that first day, but they were all lowballers. One guy asked if I would deliver it for $5. Then, around 2 in the morning, I got a text. "Is it available still? I'll come now. I'm close." I was still up, editing stems for a vocal session the next day, so I just replied, "Still available. Pick up tomorrow? Where are you coming from?" I didn't get an answer for a while, but then, probably 10 minutes later, "I'll come tonight. I need to use it." I felt that was weird, but definitely not the weirdest message I've ever gotten. I said no, not tonight, but that I was free anytime the next day after 6. No response. By the next evening, I'd forgotten all about it. My roommate and I were watching a movie, something dumb and loud on Netflix, and at 9:30 the doorbell rang. My roommate muted the TV and looked at me with confusion, and I said I wasn't expecting anyone. At the door was a man, probably mid-40s, tall, pale, and very thin. He had a buzzed head and deep eye bags like he hadn't slept in days. He wore a long black coat that looked like a thrifted trench that didn't quite fit right, and he just stared at me. You here for the keyboard?" I asked, and he nodded. He didn't say anything. He just followed me with his eyes as I brought it out from the hallway and gave it to him. And then he said, "I have to check that it works." I reminded him about the speakers and said that he would need an extra amp or headphones, but I assured him that it was working. Then he pulled out a small handheld speaker he brought and connected it to the keyboard. He played a short tune to test it. It was maybe 6 notes, very slow. And for some reason, he stared at me while he played it, just dead in the eyes, and that bothered me more than anything. He didn't say anything when he finished. He didn't smile or say thank you. He just nodded once, handed me a wad of cash, scooped up the keyboard, and walked away down the street. He didn't have a car or a bike. He just walked away into the night. I closed the door, and my roommate and I burst out laughing. I said it was the weirdest sale of the year. But something was bugging me. Not just the guy, but those notes that he had played. It wasn't a full melody, but it was like he played it for me. Like it was supposed to have a meaning. But it didn't. At least, not then. A few days had passed, and I stopped thinking about it much. Then, shortly after 2 a.m., I got a voicemail. I hadn't even noticed that a call came through. Just suddenly the notification, one new voicemail. And the message was that tune. Those exact same 6 notes. I tried to call the number back, but the call would not go through. So I went to message him on Craigslist, but his entire profile and our messages were gone, deleted. That was over 2 months ago, and I haven't sold anything since. And just this week, it happened again. I was at a small local performance. A friend of mine conducts a youth choir and invited me to hear their spring program. It was all upbeat, modern stuff. Lots of group harmonies, feel-good arrangements. They performed in this little church gymnasium with awful acoustics and uncomfortable folding chairs. And there were maybe about 40 people in attendance. The final piece was an arrangement of a folk song. It was pretty forgettable, until the pianist added a short interlude halfway through. 6 notes. And I stopped breathing. I looked at the player, a teenage girl, maybe 17, just calmly sitting at the piano, following the conductor. I knew she had no idea what it meant. To her, it was probably just some filler line her teacher wrote in. I glanced around the audience, but no one else had reacted. I didn't see the pale man or the black trench coat, or those dead eyes. Yet there were those notes, hidden in plain sight. I waited until after the performance and found the conductor so I could ask who arranged that piece. He said it came from an online archive, a teacher's forum where people swap open-source sheet music. Nothing official. I asked if I could see the music, and there it was. Those 6 notes, written as a filler bar in the middle of the piano part. Just scrawled there, with no credit, no name. I went home that night and replayed the voicemail, over and over. I hoped that I would suddenly remember that it was a common tune that I'd heard before, and it was all just some weird prank. But now, I can't listen to anything without waiting for that tune, those notes. And I swear, every once in a while, I hear it again. Once in a commercial jingle, once hummed by a kid on the train, once played by a street performer outside of a Target downtown. I've never stopped to ask. I always just walk away faster. I don't know what it means, or why he played it for me, or how it is spreading. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it is just a melody I've never noticed before, and my brain is filling in blanks. But maybe he's out there, dropping it into the world, one piece at a time. It was Saturday night, and me, Tasha, and Liv had just left this party in the hills. Like bougie house, pool glowing neon, half the guys there pretending to be DJs. I was wearing my glitter halter and these ridiculous heels I always regret. The ones that make you feel like a Bratz doll, but also like you have about 3 minutes before your ankles snap. We were standing on the curb outside, buzzed, laughing, screaming about nothing, and waiting for our rides. My app said the driver was in a black Honda Civic, license plate 8FXL something something. Whatever. 10 minutes pass and the exact car pulls up. Black Civic, same model. I glance at the plate, but it was dark and the taillights made everything hard to see. I was like, okay, that's me, love you bitches, text me when you get home. And I air-kissed everyone goodbye and climbed into the car. It smelled like sweat and old fast food. There were empty water bottles everywhere. On the front seat, the floor, door pockets, and at least 3 crumpled Carl's Jr. bags in the back. I cleared a spot to buckle my seatbelt, and it was sticky. The driver didn't say anything, not even hi, not confirming my name. He just started driving. And he was weird looking, with patchy scruff and a hoodie pulled halfway over his face. Feeling uncomfortable, I said, "How's your night been so far?" And he didn't answer. He just kept driving. Then, and I swear to God, my phone buzzes. It's an unknown number, but for some reason, I decide to answer. It was a guy on the other end. "Hi, it's your Uber driver. I'm outside." I froze. Full body, ice cold terror. I pretended like I couldn't hear, and he said, "Kelly? Where should I pick you up?" I turned and looked at the man driving. "Stop the car," I said. "You're not my Uber." He pressed harder on the gas. We were on Sunset, turning onto some side street, way darker and way emptier. I started screaming, "Stop the fucking car! Let me out!" He locked the doors. I heard them click. And that's when I really lost it. I started kicking the back of his seat, trying over and over to open the door, but the child locks were on. I called Liv and screamed into the phone, "Call the police, I'm in the wrong car." The driver turned around and looked at me like he was annoyed, and that's when I saw he was holding a knife. Serrated like a kitchen knife, not a switchblade. I unbuckled and threw myself toward the front, grabbing the steering wheel with one hand and the gear shift with the other, screaming like a maniac. He swerved hard and pulled over to stop me. I was able to unlock the passenger door and roll out onto the sidewalk, scratched and crying, but alive. He sped off before anyone could get his plate. Some people that heard me screaming came over to help. I ended up going to the hospital with some bruises and a busted knee. The cops told me that there had been several other reports like that lately, of someone pretending to be an Uber driver, targeting young girls. So now I don't take rides alone anymore, ever. I check the license plate 3 times before getting in, and I always ask the driver to confirm our names. Because if I hadn't gotten that call, if my real driver hadn't dialed me right then, I don't think I would have been able to tell you this story. This happened when I was about 15 years old, back in 2008. My parents went out to the casino for the night, so it was just me and my dog, Abby, home alone. It was about 11 p.m., and I was messaging some friends on Instant Messenger and watching YouTube videos. As I was typing and chatting away, I heard Abby barking at something in the living room. I figured it might be my parents getting home, so I just waited. After about a minute or so of more barking and no sound of the door opening, I got up and went into the living room to check it out. Abby was facing the windows that looked out onto our driveway, still barking. I couldn't really see outside because the lights were off, and it was really dark. I peered through the window and saw only the one car in our driveway, so I knew my parents hadn't come home yet. I chalked it up to Abby possibly hearing a neighbor's car door slam shut or a particularly loud car driving by, as we lived on a main road with lots of noise, even late at night. I went back to messaging my friends, but over the next 5 minutes, I kept feeling like I heard noises around my house. Abby would stop and start barking again at different intervals. I was about to get up and calm her down when I could have sworn I heard a knocking sound at the front door. I slowly made my way back into the living room to look through the windows again. Nothing. I was starting to get a little nervous, and I was too scared to look into the peephole, in case some crazy face was staring back at me. I double-checked to make sure the door was locked and was about to leave the room when the sound of knocking suddenly came from the side door of my house. I didn't know what to think. Was someone trying to break in? Was it more than one person? I barely had time to register those thoughts when I heard the sound of the doorknob downstairs being jimmied, like someone was trying to get in. The entrance to our basement from outside was pretty hidden. To get to that door, you had to walk around the entire house, into our backyard, and go under the deck. You would either need to already know the door was there, or be really determined to find a way in. Abby was whimpering and barking louder than ever, running from room to room trying to locate the threat. It felt like the whole house was surrounded. The noises from the basement grew louder, and it almost sounded like whoever it was had managed to get the door open because suddenly the noise stopped. I held my breath and stood frozen in silence, waiting for the next sound. Then Abby flew down the stairs and started growling maniacally at whatever was down there. She was a good-natured black lab who had never hurt a fly, but in this moment, I had never heard her sound more threatening. It felt like I was frozen there for hours. Finally, my fight or flight instinct kicked in when I realized Abby had stopped barking and growling. I called for her upstairs and locked the door inside the house that led to the basement. I grabbed the home phone and ran with Abby into the closet of my parents' room, where one of the guns we owned was stored. I sat there, armed and ready, about to call 911, when I heard the sounds of the front door burst open. Abby immediately sprinted out. I screamed for her to stop, but then I heard the sounds of my parents' voices. I ran into the living room to see them petting her and looking at me strangely. I spent the next several minutes recounting the events of the night to my parents. My mother was horrified, and my dad spent the next hour searching every corner of the house, inside and out, with his gun in hand. We didn't find anything, and I didn't sleep that night. The next afternoon, there was a knock at the front door. My dad opened it to find my Uncle Pete standing there with an envelope in his hand. Uncle Pete was a narcissistic creep, to say the least. He had always mistreated my aunt and acted very weird around the kids and cousins at family parties. Nothing illegal as far as we knew, but he just had this way about him. You knew to try to avoid him growing up. So I always felt a bit anxious whenever he talked to me. I played softball, and his daughter, my cousin, Kate, played in a league a few years below mine. I loved my cousin, and I always felt bad for her, having such a creepy father. So I would often give her tips or help her team out with pitching and fielding lessons. My mother and I waited around the corner, eavesdropping, and we heard Uncle Pete say something like, "I tried to stop by last night to drop it off, but no one was home." Shortly after, my dad slammed the door shut. My mother stepped out and asked what happened. My dad, his face quivering with anger, said that apparently Uncle Pete had been the one stomping around the house last night, trying to get inside. He handed me the envelope, and I opened it to find a card with a gift card inside, thanking me for helping his daughter with softball lessons. A night of panic and terror, all at the hands of my creepy uncle. My dad had threatened him on his way out, and after that, we never really spent time with him again. Thinking about this story now, I'm glad I found out who was behind the incident. Otherwise, I might have spent years wondering if it had been burglars, a ghost, or something else. I'm thankful Abby was there to protect me. She most certainly helped to scare him off. But even so, I'm left with so many questions. What the hell was he thinking? Why would he want to drop off a card so late at night? And why wouldn't he get the hint that we weren't home when no one answered the door? Why didn't he try calling the house to see if we were home? And worst of all, what would have happened if he had gotten inside? So this took place last winter. I was driving for Uber a lot, right? It was January, I think. Cold enough to freeze your eyelids shut if you blinked too slow. I had started driving nights because the money was better. Less traffic, more surge pricing, and the bar crowd always tips better after they've been drinking. But late at night, you end up seeing things and hearing things, and sometimes picking up something you wish you hadn't. That Friday night started normal. I was driving a little blue Nissan Versa, nothing fancy, but she ran good. I had a thermos of coffee in the cup holder and a gospel station humming low on the radio, just enough to keep me company. Around 1:45 a.m., I got a ping from the little dive bar on 5th Avenue. Tommy's Tap, I think it's called. It was a real crusty place. Probably hadn't changed anything since the 1970s. The kind of bar with flickering neon signs and that damp, old carpet smell that reaches your nose from the parking lot. I pull up outside, and there's this woman standing on the curb alone. No one else leaving the bar, no bouncer at the door, just her. She had on a long black coat that brushed against her ankles, but didn't wear a hat or gloves. She was just standing there with her arms at her sides, staring down at the sidewalk. If I had to guess, I would have thought she was thinking really hard about something sad. I rolled down the window and said, "You call for an Uber?" She didn't look at me. She didn't nod. She just walked over, opened the back door, and got inside. "How's it going?" I said. Still no words. Just a voice from the app, a robotic voice it uses when riders are unable or unwilling to talk. It confirmed the location. Delaware Street, 1935 Delaware, apartment 302. The woman was sitting straight up, her hands folded neatly on her lap, and she was just staring at the back of my head. When I looked back at the rearview mirror, there was no one, no reflection. I could see her in the back seat just fine with my eyes, plain as day. But it seemed like her skin didn't catch the light right. She sort of looked like a photo that had been left in the sun too long. But in the mirror, all I saw was the empty back seat. Now, I ain't no fool. I thought maybe it was just a weird angle or the mirror needed cleaning. Maybe my eyes were playing tricks. But my gut felt heavy, and it stayed that way for the whole ride. We headed down Broadway, turning onto 21st, and I started making the way toward Delaware. That area was nice once, back in the day, but not anymore. Now it's block after block of half-burned houses and boarded-up windows. The streetlights, which were few and far between, barely lit up enough to light up the ground below. As we got closer, I realized we were heading to the old Camden Apartments. It was a brick building near the old grocery store that shut down. The place had been boarded up for years. I mean, condemned. No one lives there anymore. But sure enough, the GPS said that was the destination, 1935 Delaware. I slowed down and said, "Ma'am, you sure that's the right address?" And that's when she finally spoke, for the first and only time. "Yes," she said, real quiet. And her voice, I'll never forget it. It was so flat, so tired. I pulled up to the curb, and she opened the car door and stepped out. I swear to you on everything I love, when her foot hit the pavement, the air changed. The trees around us stopped rustling, and even the car engine seemed to quiet down. She walked directly toward the building without stumbling, without nerves, totally calm. The front door was hanging half off the hinges, and I swore that it creaked open on its own before she reached it. And then she slipped inside. And that was it. She never looked back at me. I sat there, stunned, for maybe 30 seconds, or maybe 5 minutes. I know it was long enough for my breath to fog up the windows. I suddenly started to worry that maybe she was confused or had taken something, and that I needed to make sure that she was all right. So I quickly stepped out of the car and walked about halfway up to the front door, calling, "Hey, ma'am, you all right?" There was no answer. No movement. Nothing at all. There was only darkness inside that busted old doorway that seemed to have swallowed her up. Now here's when it gets really messed up. I went back to the car, pulled up the Uber app to mark the ride complete. But the trip was gone. Completely gone. It was like it never happened. I stared at my phone for a good 5 minutes, refreshing over and over, restarting it, trying to find the ride. But it wasn't there. My car was still as cold as ice inside. The next day, I told this guy I know, who works for the city code office, about what happened. He's seen some stuff too, so I thought he might know something. And when I mentioned the address, his face got real still. "You ain't the first person to see something over there," he said. Turns out, back in 2011, a woman was found dead in that very building. She OD'd, alone. She was back there for days before anyone found her. No family, not even an ID. She had been found squatting in apartment 302. They say she could be seen at that same bar every once in a while on a Friday night. She would always sit at the same stool and always leave around closing. Some people swore they saw her walking down Delaware long after she died. But those were just stories. At least I used to think so. And let me tell you something that still really makes my skin crawl. Weeks later, I had the back seat detailed, cleaned from top to bottom, vacuumed, shampooed, the works. But the guy doing it stopped halfway through and called me over. He showed me a patch under the seatbelt buckle on the passenger side and said it looked like somebody had burned something there. It was a perfect oval of scorched fabric, like the end of a cigarette had been held against it. But I had no idea when it could have happened, and there had never been any smell. I switched to driving during the day after that, and I stopped picking up riders near Tommy's. And to this day, if I drive past those apartments, even just passing by, not even stopping, I swear, my car gets cold. Like cold. I can feel it in my bones. Sometimes, when I check the rearview mirror, I wonder if I'll see her sitting back there. But I never do. So let me tell you now, if you're ever driving alone at night around Gary, Indiana, and you get a request to Delaware Street, ignore it. She's already home. I once worked as a direct care aide for a 65-year-old woman with a developmental disability. Her daughter, Colleen, who was in her 40s and needed someone with medical experience to watch her mother overnight. When I say I worked for them, I mean I literally worked just one night, and you're about to hear why I never went back. The 65-year-old woman's name was Martha, and Colleen was the one who contacted me. It's possible Colleen didn't have any other family to watch her, and she didn't want to or couldn't afford to put Martha in a nursing home. It's also possible she felt more comfortable hiring someone with experience to care for her. At the time, I was already a direct care worker for 2 other women with developmental disabilities, so I had experience. But nothing could have prepared me for that night. Colleen left for work earlier that day. I had already worked my first job, so I was pushing my body to exhaustion, trying to make as much money as possible. Colleen introduced me to Martha, who gave me a smile before Colleen took her upstairs to her bedroom for the night. It was around 9 or 10 p.m. Colleen told me that Martha sometimes walked around the house at night, acting confused, and that I would need to calm her down and bring her back to her room. She specifically told me that this wasn't sleepwalking, but a symptom of her mother's dementia. I reassured her that I would know how to handle it. At first, I spent my time in the living room catching up on a show. These jobs aren't glamorous, and for the most part, it's a lot of sitting around. After a while, I heard footsteps from upstairs. I went to the staircase and looked up, calling Martha's name, and asked if she needed anything. There was no answer, but I heard footsteps going back to her room and the door closing. Maybe she went to the bathroom, I thought. So I went back to the living room and watched more TV. About an hour later, I got up to grab a sandwich I had brought from the fridge. As I left the kitchen with my plate and sandwich, I nearly had a heart attack when I saw Martha standing in the doorway. Glass shattered everywhere. I apologized and asked if she was okay. She started yelling at me. "Who are you?" I reminded her who I was. I was her direct care worker, here to make sure she was okay. And she just kept screaming. I tried to remind her that we had just met, and that her daughter, Colleen, had hired me to watch her and the house. This finally seemed to calm her, long enough to become comfortable enough going back upstairs. I brought her a glass of water and some melatonin, making sure she took it before I went back downstairs. After a few hours, I was absolutely exhausted and needed a couple hours of sleep. There was a spare bedroom upstairs with a twin-sized bed where Colleen had said I could rest if I needed. I figured that Martha was asleep for the night after the melatonin, so I allowed myself to fall asleep quickly. But after only about an hour, I woke up to a sound from downstairs. It was a repeated slamming noise. Every 1 or 2 seconds, something downstairs was being slammed. I jumped out of bed, having left the bedroom door open so I could hear if Martha got up. As I reached the stairs, I realized that the slamming was coming from the kitchen. I rushed down the stairs as quietly as I could, and when I reached the bottom, I peered around the corner into the kitchen. What I saw was like a scene from a scary movie. Martha was standing in front of the oven, repeatedly opening it and slamming it shut. It was so dark in the kitchen that she was only a silhouette. I called her name loudly, and she stopped. She turned to her left and shut the oven door one final time before walking toward me, heading for the stairs. I asked in a soft and scared voice if she was okay. She got close enough that I could see her face, which was blank and expressionless, before she passed me and started up the staircase. I decided to follow her, and as soon as she reached her bedroom, she slammed the door shut. I knocked softly, asking if she was all right, but she didn't respond. I quietly opened the door just enough to peek inside, and there was Martha standing at the side of her bed, facing the wall. It was one of the most unsettling things I'd ever witnessed. I walked over to her, gently easing her to the bed and covering her with a blanket. I hoped that this would be the final time I said goodnight and shut her door. I crossed the hall to the spare room and tried to lay down again. I purposefully stayed awake for at least a half an hour just in case she woke back up, and eventually I fell asleep. Later, I woke up, but the room was still pitch black. I didn't know what had woken me up until I heard a sound coming from inside my closet. The door was cracked open, and there was the black shadow of a head peeking out. My heart almost stopped. "Martha?" I called softly, but she didn't answer. I called her name again and again until finally she pushed the door open. She slowly started crossing to the bed, repeating the same things she had said hours ago. "Who are you? I don't know you. Who are you? Where did you come from?" As she got closer, I tried to calm her down and remind her who I was. I fumbled to turn on the lamp next to the bed, and to my horror, Martha held a huge kitchen knife. At that moment, everything changed. Martha was now a threat to my life, and I had to worry about protecting myself, not her. I screamed for her to put the knife down, and her screaming seemed to escalate. She started moving closer, repeating over and over, "I don't know you. I don't know you." It was not in my job description to try and calm down a knife-wielding dementia patient. I quickly mapped out an escape route around her and went for it. I jumped from the bed to the far side of the room and bolted out of the door. She screamed again, "Who are you?" and swung the knife in the air as I ran past. I made it downstairs, grabbed my shoes, and ran out of the house. Instead of calling 911, I called Colleen, as she had told me to do if anything came up. She started screaming into the phone, telling me I couldn't leave. But honestly, I yelled back, saying that her mother had tried to kill me. Colleen ended up leaving work early to come home. I stayed there outside the house, keeping an eye on Martha to make sure that she didn't leave. When Colleen returned, she went inside to check on Martha, who was back in bed, asleep. She accused me of exaggerating the whole situation until she found the knife next to Martha's bed. I decided not to mention that I had gone to sleep for a while earlier. I figured she would just end up blaming me for what had happened, and I didn't feel I had done anything wrong. She was the one who brought up which room I could lay down in. But anyway, I never went back there, and I never worked for them again. In my 9 years as a direct care aide, the scariest patient I've ever dealt with by far was Martha. We've all seen it. Every page, every app, every blinking screen, flooded with AI. And the creepiest part? It's getting harder and harder to tell what's real. That smiling face in a photograph, is it human? That voice on the other end of the line, is it alive? In a world where illusion wears a human mask, you'd better watch what you believe. Because if the story you're about to hear is any clue, jumping to conclusions can be very dangerous. And if you must leave a critical comment, type carefully, for you never know who or what is lurking in the replies. Because if you scream into the void, you shouldn't be surprised when it answers. I left a comment on a horror podcast, and now I think I'm in one. This started out as something stupid, a throwaway comment on a podcast episode. I thought it was harmless, maybe even helpful, but it has spiraled into something I don't know how to stop. Let me back up. My name is Kyle. I'm 23 years old and I'm a math grad student. I spend a lot of time studying, and like many people, I need something in the background to help me stay focused. For me, it's horror podcasts, creepy narrations, ghost stories, internet mysteries, that kind of thing. I like the ones that feel grounded in real fear, not just jump scares or blood. So a couple weeks ago, I found this new channel while scrolling through Spotify. It looked polished, but didn't have many subscribers yet. That surprised me because the production quality was top tier, really immersive writing. It felt like something that was about to blow up. But there was one thing that bothered me. The narrator's voice. It was too smooth. No breaths, no vocal textures, no natural pauses. It didn't sound bad, just off, uncanny. So I left a comment on one of the episodes. Cool stories, but is this an AI voice? Hope you'll consider using a real voice artist. I thought it was polite. It wasn't aggressive or spammy. I even upvoted a few other comments so I didn't seem like a troll. And then I moved on and forgot about it. The next morning, I noticed that the comment was gone. I figured I had made a mistake when trying to post it, or maybe it violated some rule. Whatever. I shrugged it off. But later that day, I got a weird email. It was from a no-reply email account. It didn't have a subject line, and the message only said, "You don't like artificial voices, Kyle?" My stomach dropped. I had never used my name on that account. It was under a stupid junk handle I've had since high school. I never linked it to anything personal. So how could this person know my name? I blocked the sender without replying. Then that night, I tried logging into my Spotify and got kicked out immediately. When I went to reset the password, it said my email was no longer associated with the account. Then my university email pinged. It was a message from Spotify's automated support, telling me a request had been submitted to transfer ownership of my account. But I never made that request, and it was already confirmed. I tried to contact Spotify support, but the app kept routing me to an automated chat assistant. I typed, "I need to talk to a real person." It responded, "We understand your concern. Please wait while we route you to the appropriate assistant." And then it would loop me back to the start. YouTube was the same. Account locked. Recovery details changed. I tried to report the issue, but all I got were canned messages from a bot. No human response. I looked to see if the podcast was still there, and there was a new upload called The Commenter. I hit play. The story was about a grad student named Kyle. Math major, lives alone, listens to horror podcasts while working. The story starts when Kyle leaves a snide, disrespectful comment on a podcast, being too arrogant to notice what he was doing. The narrator described how Kyle's identity began to peel away like wet wallpaper. It talked about his accounts getting hacked, his passwords changed, his digital footprint vanishing. I felt cold. I stopped the episode halfway through and just sat there, heart racing. What the hell was this? I grabbed my laptop and made a new Gmail account, then another. I used a VPN and made a burner Spotify account, and then I went back to the page for the show. From the new account, I commented, "This story is unhinged. Are you okay? LOL." The comment disappeared within a few minutes. So I made another fake account. This time I wrote, "Why are you targeting people whose comments you don't like?" That one didn't get deleted. Instead, I got an email from another no-reply email address. This one read, "Funny how you hide behind false identities, Kyle. We know your real voice, the trembling one. You are the story now." I logged out, shut my laptop, and I didn't sleep that night. That weekend, I started getting weird calls, always from a blocked number, always silent on the other end. Once, when I answered, I thought I heard breathing, but honestly, it could have been my own. I ended up unplugging my router and stopped using my own Wi-Fi. I started using campus computers only, but things kept slipping through. One night, my smart speaker, which I never use, lit up blue and said, "Kyle, are you listening now?" I unplugged it, threw it in the trash. The next morning, there was a notification on my phone from Spotify. It said, "New episode ready. You're going to love this one." But I never installed the app. I factory reset everything. Phone, laptop, router. I got a new number, changed all my passwords again. But it didn't matter. I finally told a friend what was going on. He's a computer tech guy and pretty skeptical. He thought I was overreacting, maybe had some spyware, or got doxxed by some edgy teenager in their mom's basement. Then, I showed him the page for the podcast, and there was another new story. The Faker. In the story, the main character keeps making fake accounts to antagonize someone he thinks is using artificial intelligence. But the narrator isn't AI. He's real, and he's furious. He talks about how his voice had been accused of being empty and soulless, despite his years of training and work, and how he plans to prove just how personal and real things could get. The final line of the story? Some say it's scary to be watched by something artificial, but the real fear is knowing you're being watched by someone very real and very angry. That was 4 days ago. Since then, the channel has gone dark. It's not in my history anymore. My comments, emails, fake accounts, all gone, like none of it ever happened. Even the emails I saved, they won't open, like they're corrupted or something. My friend tried to help me pull cached versions of the show page. Nothing. I've even started wondering if I imagined it. What if I spiraled? Stress from school, sleep deprivation, paranoia. Then today, I went to my campus mailbox. Inside was a plain white envelope. No name, no address, just a printed sheet of paper. One sentence in black, bold letters. You gave me your voice, Kyle. I don't know if it's a person or some group or just a messed up revenge prank, but I haven't opened my laptop since. I'm posting this from a library computer in another part of town, under yet another fake name. I'm looking over my shoulder every 10 seconds, and I can't stop replaying what the narrator said. You are the story now. I thought the house I was dog-sitting in was haunted. Now I wish it had been. Hey Reddit. Throwaway because people I know follow my main account. I don't really post, and I definitely never thought I'd be writing something like this. But I haven't slept properly since it happened, and I keep thinking if I don't get it out, it's going to mess me up worse than it already has. Last weekend, I took a dog-sitting job for this sweet old lady in town. I'll call her Mrs. B. She's one of those ladies everyone knows. Super nice. I'd walked her golden retriever Max before, but this time she asked if I'd stay over from Friday to Sunday because she was going to a class reunion a few states away. The money was good, and I figured, hey, free food and a golden retriever cuddle machine for a weekend? Count me in. Her house is really old, big and creaky, surrounded by trees with barely any neighbors. It has those tall, narrow windows, dusty picture frames everywhere, and hallways that seem way too long at night. The kind of house that feels cozy in the afternoon, but turns into a nightmare on Elm Street by 9. The first night was fine. Max and I binged 7 straight episodes of Maude, eating popcorn while I laughed my ass off at the genius of B. Arthur. I crashed on the couch around midnight. I'd made sure to lock up the front and back doors, even double-checking the windows. Maybe a bit paranoid, sure, but I was alone in a big-ass house in the woods. Better safe than sorry. Around 2 a.m., I woke up out of nowhere. You know that feeling when your body knows something's wrong before your brain catches up? That's what it felt like. I was just lying there in the dark, staring at the ceiling fan. And then I heard it. Faint, slow thumping noises above me. It sounded like footsteps. I told myself it was just the leftover sounds from my dream. But then Max lifted his head and looked at the ceiling too, with his ears perked up. He let out this low, growly huff. Not a bark. Just that I heard it too noise that dogs make. My heart was in my throat. I told myself it was a raccoon on the roof or something. With Max practically on top of me, I felt secure enough, and eventually, I fell back asleep. The whole next day, though, I was on edge. I even went upstairs to check around in the daylight and confirm everything looked normal. A little dusty and unused, but nothing scary, just quiet. But when I went to feed Max in the morning, I noticed the back door deadbolt was unlocked. I was 100% absolutely sure that I had locked it. I remember twisting the deadbolt and tugging the door to be certain. I even remember thinking, you watch too many true crime docs, as I did it. So how was it unlocked? But again, I brushed it off. Brains play tricks on us, right? That night, I made sure everything was locked. I triple-checked the doors and even wedged a chair under the back doorknob. I don't care if that only works in movies. It made me feel better. Around 3 a.m., I woke up again. And this time, it wasn't only footsteps. I could hear someone walking down the stairs. Max was already off the couch, growling low and stiff, staring at the hallway like he was ready to charge. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, heart absolutely pounding. But I didn't see anything, just the empty hallway and the stairs vanishing into dark shadows. Then I heard a door creak, like someone slowly pushing open one of the guest bedroom doors. I didn't scream. I didn't even breathe. I just stood there, frozen, shining the flashlight like it was some kind of weapon. I whispered Max's name, but he wouldn't move. He just stared. I called my mom, whispering into the phone like I was hiding from something. She was out of town too. If you're scared, call 911. Cool, Mom. Thanks. I didn't sleep after that. I just sat on the couch with Max, watching the hallway until the sun came up. And in the morning, that's when I found the coffee mug. A white mug sitting in the sink, with a ring of dried coffee in the bottom. I hadn't used any mugs. I had never been a coffee drinker. I'd only been drinking from the water bottle I brought with me. I hadn't even gone into the cabinets. But there it was, and the faint smell was still lingering there. I stood there staring at it like it was a ghost. But ghosts don't drink coffee. And ghosts don't typically make noises when they walk around at night. I was officially done. I called Mrs. B and told her I was uncomfortable staying there another night because I thought someone had broken in. I expected panic or at least concern, but all I got was this weird, long pause, and then a soft, "Oh dear, are you sure?" Like she already knew. She sighed and said she would come home early, and she got back around 3 p.m. She was weirdly calm and even offered to pay me the full amount anyway. I told her again that someone else had been in the house. And that's when she finally told me. Her son. Apparently, he's in his 40s, doesn't have a job, and lives off and on with her. He has some emotional issues, she said. He doesn't have a key, but he always finds the spare. And sometimes when she's out of town, he lets himself in. She said she told him not to this time, like it was a little misunderstanding, like it was barely anything at all. I took my payment and left. And shortly after, I blocked her number. I left a review on her page on the sitting site, mentioning how great Max is and the nice house, but also that she never disclosed that a strange man could be coming by. I was in that house for 2 full nights, totally alone, or so I thought. And some grown man, someone I didn't know, had been hiding upstairs, watching me, walking around when he thought I was sleeping. And Mrs. B knew he might do that, and she left me there anyway, without ever mentioning it. I honestly think about what could have happened if I tried to go upstairs. Or worse, the idea of waking up and seeing him standing right over me while I slept. So yeah, I thought the house was haunted. I wish it had been haunted. But ghosts don't drink coffee. This happened just last year. I'm 40 now, married with 2 boys, ages 7 and 5. I work in insurance, which sounds boring because it is, but we're stable and that's all I care about at this point in life. A couple of years ago, my dad passed away after a long bout with cancer. He left behind a beach house down in Delaware that I had never been to before because he used to rent it out year-round. It's nothing flashy or big, but it's in a fantastic spot just 1 block off the boardwalk. My favorite part about it by far is the upstairs back deck that provides a really nice view of the ocean. We started going there every summer after he passed, using it for our escape. A week here, a weekend there, it became our family tradition. As much as my wife and I love spending time there, the boys love it even more. They'll spend hours on end playing on the beach, riding bikes, and exploring the town. It feels like a gift, something my dad left behind for us to enjoy. This story takes place during one of those weeks last summer. We'd gone down in mid-July, a Sunday through Friday kind of thing, when the crowds would thin out midweek, and the beach was a little quieter. I remember the night clearly. It was a Wednesday. The boys had knocked out around 9:30 after a long day in the sun, and my wife and I were sitting on the back deck playing cards and sipping wine. That's when our older son, Jordan, came outside. He had this uneasy look on his face. He told me that he kept hearing a scratching noise in his room, and it was keeping him awake. I glanced at my wife, then set my glass down and stood up, telling him that I would go check it out. I told my wife to hang tight. I figured it was probably just generic house sounds. It's a pretty old structure after all. The boys weren't sharing a room, so there was no need to wake the younger one. I followed Jordan downstairs to his room, and he pointed to the wall near his bed and motioned for me to be quiet. We both stood there for a while, and I didn't hear anything at first. But I didn't want him to think that I didn't believe him, so I kept standing there a little while longer. Then I finally heard it. A soft scratching sound just like he had described. I crouched down and pressed my ear to the wall. It didn't sound like an animal in the rafters or anything. It sounded like it was coming from inside the wall, lower down and closer to the baseboards. And then I heard breathing. Not an animal, definitely not. It was deep, slow, human breathing. I flinched back and let out a sharp "Jesus!" without even meaning to. And then, I'm not kidding about this, I heard the most guttural and angry scream I've ever heard ring out from somewhere inside the wall. I grabbed Jordan by the arm and yanked him out of the room. We ran down the hall to get my younger son, Scott, who was still asleep. I didn't even give him a chance to open his eyes. I just scooped him up and ran. I needed to get back upstairs to the deck where my wife was waiting. That was the only thing on my mind at that point. As we reached the base of the stairs, I yelled for her, and then I heard another scream come from somewhere behind me. I turned around and saw a man covered in filth, charging down the hallway straight at us. I nearly tripped trying to get up the stairs with both of my sons, but we made it onto the deck just in time. Not 2 seconds after I slammed the sliding door shut, the guy hit the glass full force. I genuinely thought it would shatter. He started clawing at the door like an animal, shrieking and pounding, yelling things I can't bring myself to repeat. I threw my body against the door and yelled at my wife to grab the kids and call the police. She pulled them back from the scene, covering their ears, while I kept my eyes on his, trying to block him from the view of my family. He was wild, completely unhinged. His hand smeared something, I don't even know what, across the glass as he banged and tried to force the door open. He seemingly had unlimited energy because it took all my strength to keep that door shut, and he didn't let up once. But all I could think about was protecting my family, and I was fully prepared to fight this guy if the glass broke. But before that happened, the police showed up. They must have come around the side because within seconds, I saw 2 officers inside the house, running at the guy who was still banging on the door. One of the officers tackled him from behind, and the other helped restrain him. The rest of the night was a blur. After getting that guy out of my house and in the back of a police car, the officers asked for my version of things, which I told them. Together, the 3 of us inspected the house to try and assess how that man had been inside the walls and how he had gotten out so quickly. It turns out, the property has a crawl space that I never knew about. There's an entrance underneath the back porch, and from there, it leads into a standing crawl space that runs alongside the foundation and has a second access point through a loose panel in Jordan's closet. I had never even thought to do a full inspection of the house when we inherited it. I never even bothered refinishing it. A few days later, I got more information from a detective who called to follow up. He shared that the perpetrator admitted that he had been staying in the crawl space for months, that he had discovered it during the off-season, and was planning to harm my family that night for intruding on his new home. Apparently, he had been stealing food from both our house, which we somehow didn't notice, as well as the neighbors' trash bins. We didn't go back for the rest of the summer. Not out of fear of something else happening, but out of trauma. I didn't want to bring my wife or kids back there for a while, and they didn't object. I hired a crew to seal off the crawlspace completely, and once that was done, I was finally able to relax a bit. We've been using the house again this summer, and I'm glad to say that things are back to normal. At least as close to it as we're going to get.